Now the waiting is over, guys, as I'm fully back to continue from where we stopped on the construction of a double-breasted blazer jacket with a short collar and a double-sided vent. Hello guys, welcome back to my channel, and if this is your first time of watching my video, this is Regi School of Fashion. In the previous episodes of this video series, I showed you guys how to take a proper body measurement for the construction of a blazer jacket. I showed you how to draft the three-piece pattern of a blazer jacket, that is, the front piece, the back piece, and the side piece. Not only that, but I also shared with you guys the materials needed in constructing a blazer jacket. In case you haven't seen those videos, kindly check the description area below for the link to the playlist. In today's episode, we shall continue from where we stopped by cutting out all the pieces we'll be needing in this journey of constructing a blazer jacket, after which other steps will follow. This project is a huge one which requires a whole lot of time, resources, and dedication. All I need from you guys is to encourage me by watching ads on my videos. Please don't skip those ads, because that is the only way I get rewarded here on YouTube. Consider subscribing to my channel for regular notifications so that you won't miss any parts of the coming episodes. Don't forget to drop your comments at the comment section as well, and also give this video a thumbs up. My name is Bolaji, and this is Regi School of Fashion. These are the pieces I cut out of the camera in the construction of a short collar blazer jacket. I did this off the camera in order to save our time. So I used the pattern we drafted in one of the previous episodes, so which is here. I have three pieces for the pattern. So this is the front piece, this is the back piece, and this is the center piece. Okay, so I will be explaining into details how I cut this out and every other necessary things you need to know. So firstly, I will start with the front piece. So here is the front piece. I cut this out in two pieces, and I folded my fabric into two when I was cutting. You can either fold your fabric right side facing the right side or the wrong side facing the wrong side. Here is the right side of my fabric and the inside is the wrong side, which are fused. Okay, first thing you need to do before cutting out your fabric is to study the pattern you have on your fabric. Your fabric can either be a plain or a pattern. So if your fabric is with patterns, you have to study the patterns if it is directional or non-directional. Directional patterns are fabrics that it is usually in checkers like mine. Some checkers are non-directional as well. So you have to know the difference between a directional pattern and non-directional pattern. Like the one I'm having here, this is a directional pattern. You can see what I cut here for the facing. I cut this line in vertical form and I cut this in horizontal. So this is intentional. So you have to study the design or the patterns you have on your fabric. But if you are making use of a plain fabric, there's no issue. You can fold your fabric any way you like it. So I folded these into two and I cut out two pieces, after which I fused it with a fusible interfacing. As you can see what I have here, this is the shoulder line for the front panel, and what I have here is a collar for the back panel. Okay, so that is why I'm having the shape like so. This is the armhole for the front panel. So this is the center front. This is part of the collar. So this is what will bring out the shape of the short collar. So after cutting out the front panel, I also cut out facing for the front panel. Inside your suit or jacket, you must have your lining. Instead of cutting out my lining with the whole of the front panel, I used fabric to cut out parts of the front panel, which is going to serve as the facing. Then I cut out the remaining parts with lining. So all you need to do when you are doing this is to hold one of your piece for the front panel. Here is the shoulder line for the front panel, and this is the shoulder line for the facing. So what I have here, on the shoulder line, I have 2 inches. So which means I took half of an inch out of the shoulder line for the facing. And the remaining half of an inch is the seam allowance I will be using in joining this together with the remaining part of the lining. Okay, so from here to here, 1.5 plus extra half of an inch, that is 2 inches. Then on the 2 inches point, so let me use the wrong side of my fabric. This is the shoulder line for the front panel, and what you have at the upper part here is the collar for the back panel. So in cutting out the facing from this angle point, I measured 1.5 inches, which is here. Then I added extra half of an inch as seam allowance, so that is 2 inches. Then I crossed this out. Okay, then I placed my fabric on the front panel like so. You can see the shape I have here, they are all equal. The only difference is what I have here. Okay, and the collar part also together with the button allowance, they are all equal. You can see what I have downward. So from here I constructed a straight line downward to the hemline. Now in cutting out your facing, because you might have been seeing different type of shapes for the facing, it is not necessary you make your line a straight line. You can make it a little bit curvy like so, or make it a complete curve. You can also cut it in 2 pieces. But for the sake of this tutorial, and in order for you not to see this too complex, I will be starting with cutting out your facing on a straight line. Then as we proceed in other designs of blazer jackets, I will be showing you different type of design of facing you can cut out for your jacket. But as for this, let's start with the straight line. So I cut this on a straight line downward to the hemline. Then when I get to the hemline, I subtracted my hem allowance because the facing has to be shorter than the main fabric. Likewise, the lining also has to be shorter than the main fabric. Okay, so here is my hem allowance. So whatever you are using as your hem allowance, if it is 2 inches, 2.5 or 1.5, the least you can use is 1.5 inches. So that is what you'll be subtracting from your facing length. Then you will add extra half of an inch. Okay, if my hem allowance is 2 inches, instead of subtracting 2 inches from the length of my facing, I will subtract 1.5. So the remaining half of an inch will serve as a seam allowance, which I will be using in joining this and this together. Okay, so that is how I cut out the facing. And I cut out 2 pieces for the facing as well. Right side facing the right side, or the wrong side facing the wrong side. After cutting out the facing, don't forget I will need to cover up the remaining part of the inside of the front panel. Okay, so this is what I mean. If I cut this out to cover up this side, the remaining part has to be covered up as well. So that is why I cut that out with my lining. So when I drew the line downward and used it to cut this, then I folded the part that I've cut out. Then I drew out the line I will be using in cutting this. So when I have the line, I just place this on my fabric. Then I added extra half of an inch as well. So don't forget, when you are cutting, make sure you add your seam allowance, because this and this has to be joined together. This is the facing and this is the lining. So by the time I join this together, it will cover up the whole inside of the front panel, and I will have it like so. Okay, then make sure the length of your lining and the facing are equal. What I have here is what I have here. That is what I subtracted from the length of the facing is what I subtracted from the length of the lining as well. And I cut this out in 2 pieces. After cutting out the front panel, the facing and the lining, then I cut out the back panel. In cutting out the back panel as well, I cut this out in 2 pieces, as you can see. If you notice, I did not mention seam allowance when I was explaining how I cut this out. This is because I've added all my seam allowances on my pattern. So if you don't add your seam allowance on your pattern, make sure you remember to add all your seam allowances on your fabric before cutting it out. Here is my back panel, and I position the fabric the same way I position my fabric when I was cutting out the front panel. So which means if you are making use of a directional fabric, make sure your patterns for the front and the back panels are equal. If you are making use of the vertical lines, make sure you use the vertical for the front and the back panel. Even though you are going to manipulate, it's not going to be for the front and the back panels. That has to be for the other part of your blazer jacket. So I position my fabric the same way I position it when I was cutting out the front panel. So here is the neckline for the back panel. This is the shoulder line, and this is the armhole. I have the side seam here, and what I have here is the vent allowance. Now I have to explain this because I did not explain it when I was cutting out the pattern. Here is the pattern I drafted for the back panel. If you are yet to see the video of the drafting part of this tutorial, kindly check the description area below for the link to the playlist. All the videos from the measurements taken are on the playlist, so make sure you watch the drafting part of this tutorial so that you won't get lost at any point. Okay, so here is the vent allowance point, and this is what I have. If you notice, I have this line on a slant manner, so it is not on a straight line. But when you are drafting your pattern, you will have it on a straight line. So after drawing out on a straight line, then you have to reconstruct it in order to have it in a slant manner. So this will help the vent area to come out properly, and it will look nice on the wearer. Okay, so all you need to do is, after taking the measurement of your vent length, for my vent length is 8 inches. This measurement was taken from the suit length point and not from the M allowance. Okay, so here is 8 inches for this. Then on the other side, I have 7 inches and quarter, so which means I subtracted about 0.75 away from the length on the other side. This is the edge of my pattern paper. From this point to this point is the wideness of the vent, okay, which is 2 inches. You can see what I have here. Then I later added half of an inch on this edge, which is going to be the joining allowance. Okay, so instead of 2 inches, I later have 2.5 inches. So this side is shorter than this side, so that is why you can see this line not on a straight line. So, and I have the same thing on my fabric. You can see it is not on a straight line, so this will make it easier for us to construct the vent area. Okay, and I cut out 2 pieces for the back panel. So after cutting out the back panel, I will be needing lining in covering up the inside of the back panel as well. You can see what I have. So I'm supposed to cut this out on a lining. Okay, it's supposed to be a full lining, but because this jacket is with a short collar, so I have to do this. I cut out facing for the back, which means I cut out part of the fabric. I cut this with fabric, and I cut the remaining parts with lining. And what I have here, you took the measurement from the HPS. This is the HPS point downward. So here I have 11.5 inches. Okay, so which means the length initially is 10.5. Half of an inch is on the shoulder line, and half of an inch is on the M line to join this together with the lining. So all you need to do is just to pick your fabric, take the measurement from here. We have half of an inch here already. Make sure you mark the seam allowance out. Then measure 10.5 inches downward. So which is here. Then I folded that part to cut this out. Okay, then the remaining part that I have downwards, I used in cutting out the lining. So after cutting the lining and this, I have extra half of an inch, as I said earlier, on the two edges, because if you don't have the seam allowance, by the time you join this together, it will be shorter. Okay, the length will not be enough. When I was cutting this out, I made this shorter than the main fabric, just the way I explained for the front panel. It has to be shorter. Okay, so that is for the back panel. After cutting out the back panel, then I cut out the centerpiece as well. So you can call it centerpiece or the side piece. They all means the same. So this is the piece that will fall in between the front panel and the back panel. Then I cut this out in two pieces as well, as you can see. And the positioning of my fabric is the same way I position my fabric for both front and the back panel. Then I fuse these pieces as well. Then on the vent allowance area, the shape I have here is the same with the shape I have on the back panel, because the two are going together. Whatever you do on the back panel must be done on the center piece as well. Okay, then I cut out the lining and covering the inside of the center piece. Also, you can see what I have. I cut this out in two pieces, and this also must be shorter than the main fabric. Okay, so the lining must be shorter than the main fabric. After cutting out the three pieces, that is the front piece, the back piece and the center piece, then I move to the cutting out of the pocket pieces. That is the pocket that is usually on a blazer jacket. There's a pocket around the chest area and there's a pocket around the waist area. So all the pieces I cut out are also fused accordingly, as you can see, but only the pocket bag I did not fuse. So the ones I cut out with the lining are my pocket bags, but I will explain, don't worry. For the pockets around the chest level, I cut out the welt. Here is the welt. This is the pocket facing and this is the pocket bag. Okay, so for the welt I used 1.5 inches on fold. So which means if I open this up, I have 3 inches. Can you see? So I fused the pieces. I cut out 3 inches. I fused it. Then I folded this into half. Then I have 1.5. Then for the wideness, I have 5.75. So when we get to the construction point, you will understand why I used this value. So this is the welt for the chest pocket, and this is the pieces for the facing. So for the facing, here I have 2.75 by 6 inches. 2.75 by 6 inches. Also, I fused the inside of my pocket. So this measurement is standard. Then here is the pocket bag. I have 5 inches by 6 inches. 5 by 6 inches for the pocket bag. These 3 pieces are for the chest pocket. All the measurements I use in cutting out the accessories for the pocket are standard measurements. So now to the waist pocket. These are the pieces I will be using in constructing the pockets around the waist area. So this pocket is going to be with flap. That is why I have much of pieces I cut out, as you can see. So I will start with the pocket bag, which is the lining. You can see what I have. So this is the pocket bag, and I cut out 2 pieces. I'm having 2 pieces because the pocket is going to be on both sides, both the right and the left hand side. And the measurement I used is 7 inches by 10 inches. 7 by 10 inches. So this is a standard measurement. Also, I have a video on how to make a welt pocket, both the single and the double welt pocket. In that video, I showed you how to construct a double and single welt pocket. The video is 2 in 1. I showed you how to construct the double welt pocket and the single welt pocket, and also how to attach your pocket bag. So in that video I showed you a different way of attaching your pocket bag, so which will be different from the one I'll be showing you in this tutorial. The video has been linked up in the description area below, so make sure you watch that video because I will not be repeating the process of constructing the welt. I will only be showing you how to attach your pocket bag using another method, and also how to construct and fix the flap that will be covering up the pockets. So make sure you watch those videos so that you will not be left behind when we get to that point. So that is for the pocket bag. Now to the welt. I have 4 pieces here for my welt, 2 for each pocket, 2 for one and 2 for the other, because it's going to be a double welt pocket. So for the welt I cut out 6.75. You can cut out 7 inches if you don't mind. Then I have 0.75 for the height, so that is 0.75 by 6.75, and I have it on fold. So which means when you are cutting this out, you are going to cut out 1.5 inches. So by the time you fold this, you will have 0.75. Also, if you are finding it difficult to read your measuring tape, I have a well-detailed tutorial on how to read your measuring tape for pattern drafting, where you will learn how to read all the small lines you have on your measuring tape, how to convert your fraction values to decimal, and how to convert your decimal values to fraction. So when you have a value you are dividing into 2, so without stress you'll be able to locate the value on your measuring tape. Half of 1.5 inches is 0.75. I fused all the pieces as well, as you can see. So the inside of my fabric is not white, so where you are seeing white means I fused the pieces. So I folded it into 2, and this is the edges. So 2 pieces for each pocket. So after I cut out the pieces, then I cut out facing for the pocket as well. So I have 2 pieces for facing, 1 for each pocket, 1 for the one on the left hand side and the other one for the one on the right hand side, and I fused the facing, as you can see. So the measurement I used in cutting out the facing is 6.75. You can round it up to 7 inches if you don't mind, by 3 inches. 6.75 by 3 inches or 7 inches by 3 inches can work as well. And I cut out 2 pieces. I fused the inside of the facing. All the measurements I used in cutting out the pieces for constructing the pocket are all standard measurements. Okay, and because the pockets will be having around the waist area is going to be with flap, I cut out the pieces I will be using in constructing the flap as well. So I decided to make mine like so. If you don't want to have lining, you can cut the whole of your flap with your fabric. But if you are making use of fabric, there's no need of cutting it out in pieces. All you need to do is to fold your fabric into 2, then you take your measurement. But because I want the inside of the flap to be my lining, so that is why I cut it out in pieces. So, and the measurement I used in cutting out the flap is 6.25 by 3.25. You can use 6 by 3, you can use 6.5 by 3.5. Okay, so what will be taken out of this measurement is not that exact value. So that is why I'm saying this. So I cut out the main fabric and the lining in the same manner. 2 pieces for the fabric and 2 pieces for the lining. So which means 1 fabric and 1 lining is going to be for 1 pocket, and 1 fabric and 1 lining as well will be for the second pocket. So this is what I will be using in constructing the pocket flap. So guys, that will be all on this episode. Trust me guys, we still have a long way to go. That is why you need to subscribe to my channel if you haven't, so that you won't miss any part of the coming episodes. See you next time, and always do remember, there is no elevator to success. You have to take the stairs.